I am going to talk to you today a little bit about place and what place means to me and what I think it can mean to you. Yesterday, we were talking about the economy, right? And I think that if you look at a place like this, I think you can probably understand why people might be pessimistic about the future of America, right? You could probably say, yeah, this is a country that's past its prime, that isn't ready for the challenges ahead. But I love places like this. And I want to tell you what I see when I look at a place like this. Restore the wetlands, some canoes, a pier so you could look at the beautiful skyline. This is Harrison, New Jersey, and it's actually not so far from where I grew up. And I was there, I was heading out for a meeting, and I was on the PATH train. This is kind of the daydream that I had. This is what I saw. And you could say, yeah, that's just your imagination, right? But for me, it's something very different. For me, it's an act of unsolicited architecture. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. I have no funding, right? There is no client. In fact, most of the buildings that are here are vacant. I don't think anybody asked me to reimagine the waterfront of Harrison, New Jersey, and I'm pretty sure that the mayor is not sitting there thinking, yeah, I want to revitalize my community. Let me go get some canoes, right? That's not what he's thinking. But when you start looking at places like this, all sorts of things happen. I'm the co-founder, together with Cameron Sinclair, who's also here today, of Architecture for Humanity. And for the past 10 years, what we've been doing is just sort of that. We've been helping people who have these ideas about changing the place that they live and helping them get them done, whether they have money, whether they know who even owns the land. We work in some of the most difficult places in the world, and we work all over the world. The network of about 90,000 architects. We share everything we do. All of our design documents are available online, freely accessible on an open source platform. So this is how we look at place, right? As Sean mentioned, we have been doing a lot of work in Haiti. We have a team of about 30 people. Half of them, more than half of them now, Haitians working to rebuild. We've been doing a lot of housing, planning housing, 1,500 units of housing, schools, clinics, you name it. But this is the project that I'm most excited about. This is downtown Port-au-Prince. And we had a woman on our team who left Haiti when she was a journalist and she was forced to leave, and she came back to help her country rebuild. And she started telling us about what downtown Port-au-Prince was like. It used to have theaters and movie houses and restaurants, and she was telling us all this incredible stories about what downtown Port-au-Prince used to be like in the heyday. So we started walking through, and we were like, wait a second, something's wrong here. Usually after a disaster, the first thing that comes back online are all the commercial spaces. But in Haiti, that wasn't happening, and we couldn't figure out what was really going on. So we started mapping all the commercial corridors. We mapped about 7 commercial corridors, hundreds and hundreds of former businesses, and you can see what they look like now. Figured out who owned them, were they rented, were they owner-occupied, were they owned by somebody in the diaspora, and to try and ask them why they weren't rebuilding. And it turned out that it was something really small. There's a ton of money flooding into Haiti for housing and coming through the NGOs. But none of that's going to these kinds of business. There's also a lot of microfinance money, right? But $7,000 isn't going to rebuild a building like this. And in Haiti, because of the conflict, the banks weren't doing commercial property loans anymore. They just weren't. So we went and talked to the banks. We figured out the product specs for commercial property loans. We put up billboards all over Port-au-Prince, which was kind of fun. We had about 100 businesses come in. We helped them fill out the loan applications to get a commercial property loan to rebuild. Now we have 9 loans that are being processed by the local banks in Haiti. And my bet is that if we can get those banks to make those loans, that Sean and I are going to be out of business, hopefully. That's what I'm hoping. This is one of the most difficult places that I've actually ever worked. This is a township outside of Cape Town, South Africa. And I say difficult not just because it was violent. It was incredibly violent. This is one of the most highest crime rates in South Africa. And at the time, this was a country where 1 in 5 women were likely to be raped at some point in their life. And this had the highest incidence of rape in all of South Africa. We were asked to help build a community center there with FIFA and Street Football World as part of their Football for Hope program. They were building 20 centers throughout Africa for the World Cup. And this was the very first site. So in addition to this being a completely dangerous area, not an area you'd want your kids, it was also a floodplain. So every time there was a heavy rain, the water would just wash into this area. This is exactly not the place that you want to put a football pitch, right? So I kept saying to them, come on guys, this is going to cost too much, we're not going to get it done on it. Please, can we just change the site? Please, I said that. I said, let's just change the site. This isn't a good site. I said, no. I said, well, can we move it over 500 meters, you know? No, it has to be precisely here. We have to build it right here. So we built the center. It's beautiful. And it opened up. On the first day there were 1,000 AIDS tests Street Football World gave. It was amazing to see this come to life. But here's what I didn't know. Unbeknownst to me, and we learned it as we went along, there was another amazing group who was working in this area called Violence Protection Urban Upgrading, VPUU. And what they were doing is they were using GIS mapping to map all the specific spots of crime that were happening in the township. And not just, it roughly happened here, specifically where it happened. And then they identified these hot spots. And then they were having little interventions, whether it was removing a bush or maybe just building a building. And ours was one of the buildings in those hot spots, right? 2 years after that building opened, crime in this township was reduced by nearly half. Nearly half. War-torn places. This is a military base in Lisbon, Portugal. As you can see, this battering ram has been abandoned for a long time. Here's how one of our architects, Miguel Pereiro Seguerra, has reimagined this as an environmental center. It's beautiful. Storage spaces. When the recession happened, the kind of homelessness that people were seeing changed. And in Minnesota, there were a group of architects, our chapter, and some architects with the American Institute of Architects, who were talking with the homeless community groups who were running homeless shelters there. And they were saying that they were now seeing not just individuals, but they were seeing families coming into the centers. And this is really different. And when you're in the shelter system, you cannot bring your belongings with you overnight, right? They don't allow it. So families were really struggling because kids have books, they have the things they need to go to work with. So we built these lockers, really simple, cost less than $500, and help these families who had lost everything keep what little they had left. Leftover spaces. This is underneath the Manhattan Bridge in New York City. Some kids had sort of squatted on what used to be parking lot, who knows. Here's what it is today. Needless to say, there's no such thing as leftover spaces. So what I want to share with you is if you start looking around you and you start looking, instead of seeing blight and crime and neglect, if you start to see opportunity, then it changes the whole way you think about your possibilities, your potential, the way you invest, the choices you make, and about investments in the future of your communities. And I'm really excited that the speakers who are here today are all going to be talking about ways that they're changing their communities. They're all undergoing unsolicited acts of architecture, and so I hope you enjoy the rest of the session.